Good morning. This is Roger, Grub Street in Exile, Grub Street Journal, etc. And I'm going to do a live blog today. Yesterday I had a bit of time and I was going through some of my older blogs and just trying to tie together a timeline, really, to give a context of what's been happening from my experience of the world over the last 15 years. That's I started blogging in Sweden back in about 2011, and I've been using the internet a lot since the mid 1990s. So a lot of stuff that I was looking at in 2010 and through the 2000s isn't, you won't find it anymore on the internet. But if you know where to look for it, go on the Wayback Machine or whatever, you can sort of you can piece together how the current narrative and the news cycle is a narrative rather than a reflection of what's actually happening. It's right. It's not really reporting. It's a narrative on something else. It's a sort of it's skewed, if you like. And I find the news cycle incredibly frustrating for that reason, because I don't think it really explains anything. Or well, it does explain things, but not really to my satisfaction in terms of, you know, the whataboutery of, well, hold on a second, last time something like this happened, whether that's 10 years or 20 years ago, you were saying something completely different. So what's actually changed? The same set of facts presented in the same way. There's obviously something going on there. So I'm just going to check if that's actually coming out live. Yeah, so if you are watching this live on the blog, hi, that's cool. So that is working. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the blog I started doing today when it sort of hit me, well, maybe I should do this live. So what I did was I put together a bunch of notes. Now, notes in Substack that you make. So if you do a post, you can restack it with a note, and then it comes in notes. Okay, and I started going through these because there's a whole bunch of posts that I've been going through, giving a little commentary, a little comment or quip as we go. And this was with the intention of providing a sort of a timeline on a theme which I was blogging on yesterday. So if we again just go back to view the site, the home page of my Substack has got the first one, that's the most current one, is the top left. So that's on the right of the screen, but my left as I look at it, or your left as you look at the screen. And this one in the middle is pinned, and this one in the middle, which is pinned, is a post around the Addicted to Distraction book that Bruce Charlton wrote. Now, Bruce Charlton is a very interesting character. He used to be the editor of a science journal, which got bought by Elsevier and closed down. And the reason it got closed down was that Bruce Charlton came under great criticism for publishing a paper by a chap called Duesenberg, who was a leading expert on immunology and immune responses and things like that. And he wrote this paper saying that HIV and AIDS were not a thing, what AIDS actually was a form of uh, immune response um, to a hedonistic lifestyle, basically. I mean, you can look it up. Now, Joe Rogan did interview Peter Duesenberg, and that episode, look for it on YouTube. You'll be lucky to find it. I don't. I think it might be in the list of podcasts on Spotify or whatever, but I put it up on my BitChute channel. So if you're in Britain, you can't watch that now. If I put it up on YouTube, it wouldn't survive very long. And these sorts of things are things that I find frustrating, because the various turning of the thumb screws, if you will, on net openness and net censorship really started very noticeably around 2016, and then there've been a series of tightenings of that: 2016, 2080, 2020 with COVID. Who knows, maybe we're going through one again at the moment. It's sort of gradual, although it's very noticeable at the time if it affects you personally. And this is all part of this idea of, well, hold on a second, if I put on the news today, and I've been on a desert island for 30 years, and look at the news 30 years ago, they're very, very different, you know. And why is that? What's happening? And then the title of the blog that I did, where this is actually appearing live at the moment. Yeah, so that's still streaming live, so that's cool. And the title of it is a walk through the Going Direct Paradigm Mind Map, gathering context, how to approach a monopolized market. Well, so why this is all particularly interesting is that I'm a businessman and have to compete, or try to compete, or establish a business within a highly monopolized, liberalized marketplace. So when the UK was in the EU, it was governed by UK trade laws, etc. And it's going more that way again. But doing business in the USA or elsewhere in the world, governed by World Trade Organization rules and all of these transglobal trade deals. And this idea that, and they call that free trade, which is kind of laughable, because what free trade actually is a set of rules which allow large corporations to access home markets where those rules apply, and effectively it regulates who or who can't rip off the customers within a franchise. And governments have become franchisees, in my view, under this under this well, I would call it a regime, but under this free trade regime, that's what's happened, and that's happened gradually as well. So NAFTA. So this is back in the early 90s when Ross Perot ran for president. He was highly critical of NAFTA. Al Gore was pushing it. Bill Clinton was pushing it. George Bush Senior, George Bush I, was pushing it. 20 years later, reports came out about NAFTA, and it hadn't worked. It was detrimental on both sides of the border, apropos Mexico and the USA, and also affected, well, Canada as well. But effectively, US businesses were prejudiced by that. Now, a lot of these linkages, you know, as I'm speaking and doing this, I kind of get a little bit sort of excited, sort of think, oh yes, okay, there we are. I can see this theme emerging, and where does it come to now? The reason I don't want to kind of freestyle this, as it were, and that I put these slides up, was to give a theme on just one of the narratives which has changed, and to track a narrative over a period of time, as I look past over previous posts. Now, just another point on the methodology of this, so we can get that straight. So when you click on an actual, oh no, well, it is the latest one, isn't it? So let's just do this. The last latest one with this one. So the money myth exploded. Money is created as debt. Okay, so yesterday I went on my mind map and I saw a link to the Michael Journal, and I first read the Michael Journal probably around 2008, 2009. This specific 75th anniversary edition, I'm not quite sure what the date is. We'll have a look in a minute. Let's just let's have a look. So the link is there on the blog, so you can call this up. Have they got a publication date? Yeah, here we are. Free edition, January 2015. So I would have read this in 2015 when it had first come out. And by the time I started reading this, I'd watched films like The Money Masters by Bill Still. I think I'd watched The Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney. I'd already been involved with Positive Money, which was a group founded by a guy called Ben Dyson to basically reform what was still being called then the fractional reserve money system. But let's call it the fiat money system for now, which is private banking, transnational corporations, central banks and transnational banking corporations creating credit as debt on behalf of governments. Okay, so the governments franchise that to them, and then within the government franchises, they have an agreement which effectively puts the interests of global corporations and banking ahead of individual citizens and businesses within local markets that don't actually belong to the global transnational corporate club. And it should be a famous, it's infamous and little known example of this was in the early 70s, when the so-called Nixon shock and oil crisis was going on. Effectively, local Texas oil producers were effectively undermined, cut out in favor of OPEC and the Saudi oil deal to promote the petrodollar, which was against the interests of smaller businesses, smaller oil business in Texas, and in favor of the global banking monetary system when the dollar had come off the gold standard, had gone over to a petrodollar standard. And this is all really very important as to what's happening now and the flirtation around a fixed supply of money, a monopoly issuer of credit, whether that's through Bitcoin mixed with the gold standard, i.e. physical gold, or whether something else should be looked at because it's actually much fairer and ends up with a fairer distribution of wealth. And it's not about, if people work hard and if people take risks, they should be rewarded on a fair playing field. Okay, so but that isn't what happens. What actually happens is precisely as things are described in this PDF, which is in front of you, with the money myth exploded. And that the blog I did yesterday took the, where are we? Here we are. The problem of arithmetic benevolent banker, and Oliver the banker exults. And this is very, very true. And this knowledge, if you will, started coming to the surface again after the 2010 or 2008 to 2010 global financial crisis. It came to the surface in some circles during the dot-com bubble, and periodically, but particularly during the Great Depression in the 1930s, 28 crash through to the late 30s into the Second World War. But it also came to the surface after what was called the crime of 1873, when silver was demonetized. So these themes of robber barons, monopolies, and central banking or a banking cartel ripping off the small guy, the mom and pop stores, the not so small as well. But if you're not in that global corporate transnational club, then you're a target, you're a mark, and it isn't fair. And the ebb and flow and the checks and balances have been put in place and then eroded. And the current erosion is the charges led in the United States, and there was something called the Glass-Steagall Act, which changed the rules for banks being able to use their own credit for their own direct business, basically, which is where you have a bank being judge, juror, and or poacher and gamekeeper all at the same time, and it makes it then impossible for anyone else to compete in a fair market with fair price discovery. Now, those are kind of economics jargony type things, but unfortunately, you can't really get to grips with the concept of money and concept of what it is and how it affects our daily lives without a bit of a learning curve. And then what I try to do is sort of explain it to myself in simple terms so that I can explain it to myself without that jargon. And that's what I'm really interested in. I'm interested for myself because I'm a businessman and I want to, I don't want to rule the world. I don't want to run a monopoly and cock a snook to everybody else. But what I do want to do is be a merchant in a marketplace with everybody playing by the same rules, and earn a good living for the security of my own family. That's the pure ambition and objective of my business pursuits, if you will, to give the customer fair value and to have a fair return to provide security for my family. It's that simple. And I don't think that's naive. I think that the system, the way it currently is set up, is paranoid, exploitative, coercive, and the mythology surrounding it, that it is necessary to do things that way, is utter bunkum. So anyway, so let's get back to the theme. Now, so you get a blog like that, and then if you go to the bottom of the blog, okay, what you have is the other blogs which have happened, and basically the ones with the most views appear first. So here, hardly anybody knows what Aadhaar is unless you live in India. It's not been well covered at all. It's a huge problem, and it is that's the proving ground for social points credit systems, rationing, you name it, all of the bad stuff that could come about from COVID passports, which again were ration books effectively, social credit point scoring, blah blah blah. Right, Aadhaar is the precursor. Forget about the Chinese one. Sure, that's it. They've got pilots all over the world, but Aadhaar is massive. It's in India, which is the most populous country on earth, with a massive dalliance still with the neoliberal experiment, which has crashed, burned, and failed everybody worldwide, apart from the transnational global corporate in-group. It's quite that simple. But anyway, these are the top ones there. So if you're interested, you can click on this Substack and read through them. But what I want to do then is show that, right, so those are the top ones, or you can do the latest ones. Okay, so there we are. That's the one I'm doing at the moment, the latest one there. Walk through the Going Direct Paradigm Mind Map, gathering context. So let's just do this. So in turn, this is my latest splurge of boiling down this Substack and my old blog, which dates back to 2010. So if I say see all, okay, and then go, there are 480 on here, I think, some of which aren't populated because I tried to import, but the import thing only imports titles from old blogs. So I'm going to get to the, still only January 2025. There have been periods when I haven't actually put a lot on here, so this has been a kind of a labor over several years of importing blogs which kind of complement, shall we say, the current narrative when I notice the narratives coming up, because I really don't pay attention. There really is very little point. It's if you want to watch repeats on television, then there's a channel called Dave, which is old British television hits, and the internet for me is just a diluted version of Dave, that television that plays repeats or whatever. It's just the programming is low quality, very low rent, the internet. I'm not a fan, suffice to say. So let's where are we up to? May 24. Actually, that was a blog. Ranj and I were discussing Grace Blakely's new book there, which is very interesting. Vulture Capitalism, Corporate Crimes and Backdoor Bailouts. It is a good book, and Ranjan and I go into it. This is a party political broadcast on behalf of the British Workers' Party. Brilliant. It really is. From totalitarian state monopoly stagnation to distributism. That's my spin on it, but that really is worth watching. That's me and my old mate Mike discussing Jesus throwing the money changers out of the temple. All right, where are we? I'm going to get to the beginning, and then what I'm going to do is go through this theme of money. There we are. Monopoly. Tim Gielen, Dutch guy who made that film that was very current during COVID. Very, very good film. There's a cartoon of Thomas Paine there, the Common Sense pamphlet during the United States Civil War, War of Independence against King George III. A lot of stuff happened at that time, chaps, including the there's a lot of stuff from Benjamin Franklin around that time. So Hamilton is not your friend if you want free markets. He is your friend if you want free trade. He was basically an agent of the Bank of England, the British Central Bank, which was founded in 1694. And so a lot of this stuff, you know, you can go back to 1694 or the Bank of Amsterdam, which I think was 1604 or something like that. I'm doing this in Sweden. Sweden has one of the oldest central banks in the world, the Riksbank. You know, this is the you know, to answer the question in the, you know, this thing here, where are we? Who are the real rulers of the world? You'll get some of that history if you you know, if you go further down here. Obviously this was in 2015. It mentions the Bank of England here. There he is, there's Benjamin Franklin. Here we are. In 1694, these bankers legally obtained the right to manufacture and lend at interest money to the sovereign government as well as the individuals. That year, King William III of England needed money to wage war, etc. Then you have Thomas Paterson and the Bank of France and all of that stuff as well. You have the East India bubble and all that stuff. There he is. There's Hamilton. There's Honest Abe Lincoln. Anyway, this is all very much worth reading because some of it may seem quite historic. It's still relevant to how things are actually panning out today, and gives a lot of clues as to the direction of travel. Read Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. Now that was published in, I think it was 1968. So that timeline finishes there. He continued working afterwards for a while. There are interviews with him talking about that book and how it was quite quickly ushered off to one side. They destroyed the printing place initially, apparently. Then one of the editions that was published later has a foreword by a guy called Michael Chadwick, and Michael Chadwick also then wrote a book about all the Trilateral Commission stuff, and again I've blogged extensively on that, and he more or less brought Tragedy and Hope up to date to his time, which was the late 90s into the early 2000s, etc. And that it's still an ongoing process, and you need to look at this timeline to understand what is happening now, because the narratives in the news cycle give no context, no explanation. They just refer to markets as if markets are a thing in themselves. It's not, it's people carrying out policies which actually have their roots going all the way back actually to ancient Babylon. Double entry bookkeeping is the Babylonian bookkeeping system. It just is. There you have it. So there we are. It's a 5,000-year-old system which is updated and brought into a modern spin, and it's important to understand these things because it's pretty much the same two basic mindsets informing the worldview of the people entrusted with carrying on this unfair system. And those two worldviews are based around Aristotelianism and Platonism. So anyway, let's just get back here. Right, where are we? So we're still trying to get back. There we are. Where are we up to here? 23. I started doing this blog in a although I got us, here we are, right, coming soon. So in July 2022 I imported a bunch of titles but didn't do anything with this, and then I started pretty much at the beginning of 2024. Just a good way of looking at that is just to look at the stats here. And if I look at traffic and I click here, so I started in July 22, I started the blog, but I started blogging properly in January 2024. So if I change that to January 2024, you can see I put a lot of blogs up. There were 3,000 views, in February, for instance. And it wasn't until December 2024 when I actually had some time off and brought things up to date again, and then had over 3,000 views then. And I've had a bit of time the last few weeks, and you can see split between April and May, we're kind of up there as well. So this is not a blog that many people read. The Going Direct Paradigm Mind Map is not something that many people address or access, but I'm just doing this video because if people are doing some research, you might find it's a bit of a shortcut to some stuff that you won't find just by usual web searches, certainly not through Google, possibly not even by DuckDuckGo. And most people don't use the Tor browser because the security layer is getting into it with a lot of inertia. And this is part of the problem, the convenience of the modern internet, which is enshittified. Wholesale enshittification is the way, including Substack. But it's convenient, and keep smashing the subscribe button and clicking those likes, and Bob's your uncle. You get your endorphin fix. You feel you've informed yourself, whereas actually it's a great big echo chamber of superficial repetition of arguments about the current narrative, and what happened 6 months ago, a year ago, let alone 10 years ago. So going back, say, to the Occupy movement in 2010, hardly mentioned anymore. It's been written out of the current narratives. So anyway, there you go. So let's just right. So here we go. So debunking money, debt-based carbon currency endgame, ties to the dollar bone, usury health views on mana proof. So it was August the 8th, 2022. And effectively, this is still my shtick, as it were. And the purpose of this blog was to pull things from my old blog. So if we just get that up here, I'm just going to do that. So this is my old WordPress blog, and this blog was imported wholesale from Blogger, which is the Google blogging app. And you have to go to the Wayback Machine to access the originals of those older blogs. But if we just go visit site, and I've gone between paid WordPresses and free WordPresses, and so there are gaps. And so there is a blog called Mind the Gap, which covers the missing blogs that I did between the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2024. But you see, this is searchable. But if I click here, has it got any stats? Yeah. So this blog has got 51,000 hits on it, whereas the Substack blog's got less than 20,000. And you can search, you see. So if I want to find this one, debunking money and debt, put copy. I put that in here. Here we are. So that was a blog I did in August 2022. irrelevance of mainstream economics, event 201 with hindsight, was it a monetary event, chrematistics to carbon credits, the new monetary system, the carbon credit gold standard, when the crisis hit the fan, or now the guano is hitting the ventaxia again. So there we are. So if we just open that one, and then I shall get to my point and go through this. So debunking money debt, carbon-based currency endgame. So actually what I can do is I'll just go. So you can see these posts are very long. They're effectively what they're meant to do is just give me notes so I can go back and find sources that I found at the time when I wanted to check something out. So copy, I'll just edit that, and then is that, yeah, there we are. Cool. And then I'm going to just say update. Right, so that's now the oldest one that isn't populated. So like there and there. Update now. Okay, so there you have it. So that one is now there, and we're pretty much back to the blog I did yesterday about the monetary system, and also the one about the Michael journal. And so that's on there. And so let's just take, and I'm just showing, where are we? So just take Tides of the Dollar Moon here, copy. Here is the Going Direct Paradigm Mind Map, which is basically the companion index to a whole bunch of research following on from the Substack, Grub Street in Exile, and the WordPress blog, Grub Street Journal. And that was ported into WordPress from Blogger around 2019, 2020. And that Blogger thing did have in excess of 100,000 reads on it. So I guess I had about 10,000. Well, actually, no, it's probably about 50,000 people reading it a year. I mean, I've never been particularly interested in promoting any of this stuff. I'm still not. But they're my research notes, and I'm happy to share them because I've shared other people's work, and I try to be very diligent about referencing that and attribution, etc. But right, so if we say here and paste, this is the search bar, if you like, Tides of the Dollar Moon, there will hopefully, no, hold on, there we are. So you can put in the search bar up here to search for things, and then Tides of the Dollar Moon comes up, and down here, Tides of the Dollar, Going Direct Paradigm. That's interesting, it hasn't got a link, so I'm just going to do that when I'm here. Add a link, no, add attachment, add URL, and I'm going to do it here. Tides. There you go. So the original Tides of the Oh, I remember writing that blog. That's a good blog, that one is. I'll just have a quick look at that one in a minute. George Levis and the Martyrs of the Tides of Capitalist Tyranny, Song of Freedom. That's the Pentry Uprising, I think. Anyway, let's not just do that. So let's just click here. There she blows, and then I'm just going to put that in here. Paste. Okay. Yeah, and then I'm going to just there we are. Stick that there. Paste. There we are. So, and then I'm going to get back to that list just quickly, just to keep it on that point. But now I'm on this, it's hard to pull myself away. Major narratives. So these are major narratives which come up, and accessing through this, you can reference how they've developed over 25, 30, with Engram over several hundred years. So major narratives: artificial scarcity, Covid-stroika. Now that's a pun on perestroika and glasnost. That was the fall of the Soviet Union. Agenda 21 and 2030, anti-Semitism, COVID-19, elitism, ESG. Money isn't a major narrative. There isn't a narrative around money really, apart from markets. But these, the war on terror, obviously that's a big one. And so then you can dig into them further. ISGP, this is a little known website, which is, I think, probably the premier website, heavily shadow banned. It's got something called Scare. Oh, there we are. That's not bandwidth my end, because I've got super fast broadband here. What's happening here? Let's have a look. Nope, it's not liking it anymore. Well, this is a shame. That's very interesting. Okay, well, just in the hope that this may still be streaming on here, for whatever reason. Right, I'm going to stop sharing this window. The whole shooting match has actually, right, okay, I think we're frozen, so none of this is working. Oh, how unbelievably annoying is that? Right, okay, so that might be working now, just on the old Control-Alt-Delete. Just go here. And are we back now? Major narratives. Yep, we are back. So I'm just going to actually, I'm going to dive back into it and see if this is all still going. Is this still going? Yeah. Okay. Test 1 2 3. Right. Okay. So we're still going live. Recovered the position there. Put me in the cricket team. Right, where are we? Substack, there's some viewing figures. Right, the archive. So we just updated that one. There you go, there we are. So we imported that from here, which is my old blog there. and so that's the old archive. And I always say, increasingly I come back to the same starting point as the narrative, sort of like concertinas. And this was when the crisis hit the fan, or now the guano was hitting the Ventaxia again, August the 8th, 2022. Well, here we are in May 2025, and it's a very similar point. So yeah, if you're interested, you can click on any of those and read them. But at the beginning here, you can see there are a bunch that I haven't ported from the other blog. But if you see those titles, you can go and find them, or you'll find them on the Going Direct paradigm. Oh, actually, sorry about this, guys. Share screen, window. There we are. Sorry about that. So there we are, sharing the window again. So I was just saying that these ones that aren't populated at the very beginning, those were the imports that doesn't import the stuff from this other blog, so you can look them up. Right, so okay, so this is an interesting guy, Harry Miller. This is his testimony about how the police knocked on his door asking him to check his thinking. I think that was some sort of stuff to do with gender or whatever, I don't know. But let's see what date that was. So that was 5 years ago, yeah. So this was just coming into COVID, pre-COVID. And of course, the online visitations of police to, people expressing themselves online had become a thing. I believe they're more so now under Keir Starmer. But there you go. So what did I want to do then? Right, so major narratives, we just had a look at that. And I was just clicking on ISGP, wasn't I? So here's ISGP. So if we just click on that, and many people that watch this, not many people will, but I would have thought probably 75% of people won't even know that this site, the Institute for the Study of Globalization and Covert Politics, exists. Okay, so it's a guy called Joel van der Heugen or something. He's a Dutch guy. He's been doing this for donkey's years, and it's got his take on a lot of themes over many years. Psychedelic elitism. Look, there we are. That's what's he called? People recognize him there. Interesting philosopher chappy. Oh, come on, Lewis. Where are we? So this is for my benefit, not yours, if anyone is watching this. Oh God, what's the guy called? So annoying, that is. Just this article alone would probably make a few people's hair curl, as it were. Alan. Hold on, here we go. Find Alan. Alan Watts, that's it. Alan Watts, not to be confused with Alan Watt, both now deceased. But Alan Watts wrote very interesting stuff. In fact, I don't think he's got an individual thing on this mind map. But anyway, ISGP, highly recommended, and you can get a link off the mind map here. So so government, austerity, ISGP, compromat, lies-based imperial order. My answer is love is the answer. That's the thing. Don't give in to hating. Don't fall into resentment. Just live your best life and there are terrible things happening in the world. So obviously if those terrible things are happening, this is not, I wouldn't presume to give advice in those situations, but in general, for those of us fortunate enough to live in places that aren't being torn asunder by war, pestilence, and other misdeeds, we get our knickers in the twist about shit online. I mean, come on, have a word with yourself. The simple point is that the absurdity of the fairy tales, which are now presented, of narratives trying to explain what the F is going on, is just that. It's absurd, and paying it any mind is just kind of crazy. And there is some comfort, I think, in actually reading something like Tragedy and Hope, getting to grips with I say stuff here. Look, the Inter-Alpha Group. Look, now the Inter-Alpha Group was the holding company of the Rothschilds' interests in the world. You've got the Rockefellers too, and you've got things like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Chicago Business School, these Rockefeller investments, if you will. So knowing this stuff, knowing what a neoconservative is, watching the Tim Gieland film Monopoly, which is there, Ecoscience, the Population Agenda. Now, this is a guy called Webster Tarpley, reviewing John Holdren's book, Ecoscience. Now, my view is that James Corbett draws heavily on Tarpley's work and themes, but that's because they're themes that they're enduring themes that remain relevant. Now, nobody really references Bruce Charlton, but I highly recommend people read Bruce Charlton's work. And it's, you can find it. It's not been taken off the web. It's just that you probably won't find it without a recommendation. So if we just go here, look, put in Bruce Charlton, Addicted to Distraction. So here's Bruce here. And then if you go to I've done a blog about him there, which will in turn then where is Bruce? Let's just find Bruce. Here we are. So Bruce Charlton is here, Addicted to Distraction, and so I don't have a Facebook account yet anymore, but I did used to have one, and here we are. That's a Facebook link still going to Addicted to Distraction by Bruce Charlton. So that's a couple of clicks even away from the mind map there, but this is important stuff. So this was published in 2014. 2014 is another world, another epoch, another area. I mean, we've got, was it Anno Domini and before Christ, BC AD. Well, we more or less, you could have before .com bubble, before global financial crisis before COVID. So that's 2000, 2010, 2020. We're heading into 2030. So what Agenda 2030 may bring or not bring to bear, you know, if we just go back there and just put in 2030 into the mind map here, has it in there? All right, it's under major narratives, isn't it? So go to major narratives. And where was it? I saw it earlier. There we are. Agenda 2021 and Agenda 2030. Now, both UN published stuff. You can look them up. And actually, just another one, ISGP, is very good to look at. But I'm just going to put in technocratic. Here's another one that you'll never find. I'll find it myself. Oh, how annoying. There we are, technocratic tyranny. This site, copy. Paste. Where does it put it? There we are. So that's that one there. And I'm just going to say, just change that here. There we are. So that is a brilliant website, which basically has all of the source details, conferences, the whole bit. There you go, major narratives. There we are. Right, okay, analysis of the current events, the bigger picture, Tim Geelan. So Tim Geelan had a blog on the original of that Monopoly film. There we are. So you see that's on the Wayback Machine. So let's now just come back. Here we are. So we're still live here in the page. And I started doing this. So AI turned itself in on itself, an ironic metaphor of the tyranny of artificial small-mindedness. Now, I wrote a poem called The Metaphors for Tyranny last week, which sort of started me off on down this, and I wrote it, and then I typed it into here, and then I did a thing with AI with it. But here, this is it here. Look, a poem is like an algorithm, not in itself, but similar. Algorithms are similes for poetry. Algorithms are not like poems. Poems are a stream of consciousness that enliven and awaken. A metaphor that inspires the imagination of possibilities, not a modelled conformity of determinism, tyranny. Algorithms are a metaphor for tyranny. So that was that there. Anyway, you get the idea. And that effectively is that. So if we just go back to my notes, here they are. So here are my notes. And as I went down, it's Richard Wilkinson. This is a book called The Spirit Level that came out at the time of the global financial crisis. When I first moved to Sweden in 2010, I saw a documentary about it on the Kunskapskanalen, which is the public broadcaster in Sweden. And it's a really interesting book. Came in for a lot of criticism from neoliberal economists and all the rest of it, but it's absolutely spot on, very good. This reference to Viktor Efimov, Professor Viktor Efimov, from the sacking of the Russian Federation post Glasnost. There's a golden turd. I think the gold standard is a very bad idea. I don't think there's a honest money is a very good idea, and gold can be a part of that. But having gold or Bitcoin alone as the backbone of a monetary system is basically the road to serfdom. Crime of 1873, demonetizing of silver follows that. And where are we? Trump's golden turds. I don't know if he's polishing the shoes of big oil and big banking. But still, I really don't know. If Dirt Were Dollars, that's a great song by Don Henley on the album Age, The End of Innocence, and which is little known, and that track particularly is brilliant. It's my poem, The Magic Money Tree. Yeah, so I mean, you can just follow them down, and all of these things, I could probably speak for an hour on each of the titles as we go, but I'm not going to because nobody's interested. So that is that, and I'm just going to oh no, where are we? Posts. That's the post we're on at the moment. So we'll view the post. Okay, we will play. Right, that's pretty quick, and that's it. So I'm going to get this hopefully to feed back. So that's me signing off. So here we go. If you have been watching, fantastic. And